Hey guys, welcome back to episode 5. So in this episode we're going to start off by reinstalling the oil pump. The oil pump just goes right here on the end of the crankshaft and slides on, and then it's going to be torqued down with its bolts to about 12 Newton meters. When you're installing the oil pump, make sure you line up the tabs in the oil pump with the drive tabs on the crankshaft here. This is where the oiling problem for some of the Nissan RB series engines come from. These two tabs over time have a tendency to hammer the drive gear in the actual oil pump until it fails and breaks. So now I'm just going to go ahead and run the bolts down hand tight, then I'll go ahead and get ready to torque them. So again, these are going to be torqued down to 12 Newton meters, and I'm just going to go ahead and start here in the middle and work my way around. Okay, so up next I'm going to go ahead and install the water pump. You may notice I went ahead and put the timing belt drive on there, but I just kind of set it on there to check it. But the water pump is fairly straightforward. It just goes right here in this interesting shaped port on the engine, and so we'll go ahead and get that going. So one thing to note is I'm being real careful here. The gasket's actually on the back of the pump sitting on the bolt, so I'm being real careful to thread these in to make sure I got it started correctly. And then of course I'm just going to finish running the bolts down hand tight before I get ready to torque them. So I believe the torque sequence footage got lost when I was torquing those down, but I'll go ahead and post a diagram here of what the torque is for those, because I can't remember right now either. So now I'm going to go ahead and install the studs for the water pump pulley. I'm Loctiting these so they don't come out, and then I'm just tightening them down using two nuts to just tighten them down snug. So if you're unfamiliar with this technique, it's an easy way to install a stud. Just put two nuts on the stud and tighten them into each other, and then use one of the nuts to tighten it down. And it's really an easy way. Then you just loosen the two nuts away from each other, then you can just take them off by hand again. Okay, so now it's time to go ahead and get ready to start installing the cams. So the first thing we need to do is make sure the engine is in top dead center, so on cylinder 1. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and install the pulley here and the backers to it, so I can easily rotate the crankshaft and I can tell where the engine is in space. One thing when you're putting the pulley on, it does have a little dot on it, and that's going to go outward because that tells you where it lines up with the little mark on the crank or the oil pump casting. Okay, so on this timing belt there's actually going to be 3 lines. This is the Gates Racing timing belt, and it has the marks on it. It's an easy guide to use to set the timing on the engine. Of course it needs to be checked, but 2 of the lines are going to be closer together. Those are going to correspond to the marks on the cam pulleys, and then the one that's kind of farther away from the other 2 marks on the belt is going to correspond with the mark on the crank pulley. So now you can really see the dot on the crank or the timing pulley and the mark on the casting. That is top dead center on cylinder 1. It has to be that way because it's keyed, unless the crank's twisted or something like that, but short of that, then you know it's in the right spot, and cylinder 1 is at top dead center. Okay, so I'm going to align this mark right here on the timing belt with that dot on the timing belt cog, pulley, whatever it's called in this case. So I'll go ahead and put that right there first. So the first step here, I'm going to go ahead and install the timing belt tensioner and the timing belt idler. Sorry I didn't adjust the camera. They're sort of on camera there at the very top of the screen. The stud sticking out is going to be for the tensioner, and the hole to the upper right is for the timing belt idler. So the tensioner is really easy. It just has a long bolt that goes through the idler here into that bolt hole in the back, so I'm going to go ahead and thread it in by hand. Of course, this is a new idler. Always go ahead and replace those. So now the tensioner and the idler have magically installed themselves, so we can go ahead and move forward with the build. I'm adjusting the tension on the tensioner here to the least amount, that way I can put the belt on easier. So I'm just kind of hand tightening it into the most slack position, that way it's, like I said earlier, easy to put that belt on. So before I go any further, I'm going to go ahead and remove all the cam cap bolts for all of the cam caps here. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and back all these bolts out so I can get ready to remove these cam caps so I can go ahead and install the cams. Okay, so the way you know which way this cam is going in is there's this pin here on the front of the cam. It's going to go in line with the slant of the front of the head there. I'll post a diagram from the Nissan manual up here. So it just goes just like that, in line with that. So now I'm going to go ahead and just set the cam caps back in their corresponding place to get ready to start hand tightening these down. One thing I'm doing here is putting anti-seize on these bolts because these are notorious for seizing in there. And this happened when I took this engine apart actually, and it makes it a really bad day. So I'm just putting a little bit of anti-seize on each one of these bolts as I put them in. Be careful with it and try not to get it everywhere, just a little bit on each bolt to keep it from seizing in there eventually. Okay, so I'm starting now to hand thread the bolts in for the cam caps. So now I'm just using my T-handle to run these down. I'm starting on the outside, working my way in now. I'm just taking them down a little bit, a step at a time. I'm not going all the way down. You can see it pulling down a little bit. You want to be really careful not to break one of these long camshafts because that can and has happened. Okay, now that I've gotten these all run down till the cam caps are seated firmly, I'm going to go ahead and torque them down to this many foot-pound or inch-pounds. And again, I'm starting on the outside, torquing from there, and then working my way inward. Okay, so now I'm just going to repeat the exact same process on the exhaust side over here, taking the cam caps off and then installing the cam in the same way. Another easy way to tell, you can really see it here. There's those notches in the cam. What those do is allow you to take the head off of an RB without removing the cams, which is a really nice feature. And it's also kind of a giveaway that they are where they are, because if they're in any other position, you wouldn't be able to take the head off, and they want you to have the engine in cylinder 1 on top dead center. So of course these are going to be torqued down in exactly the same way as the intake side, so I'm just going to use the same process here, and you can just use it's the same process on both sides. Okay, so now the cams are in and torqued down, and now I'm just making sure they're in exactly the right spot. I'm lining that pin up on the slant of the block. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully the videos will be coming a little faster soon. I'm still finishing up the garage, but the next videos will be the FC1, finishing that up. I'm rebuilding it, putting the engine back in. I've almost finished the paint on it. So hope you guys join me for that, and thanks again for watching.